Lust leads to suffering. Have you ever wondered why the Buddha, the embodiment of infinite compassion and unshakable wisdom, warned so clearly against lust? Welcome, dear friend. This is Lotus of Dharma, where seekers gather to remember truths the world has long forgotten. Today, I ask you not just to listen, but to look deeper. We live in an age where lust is glorified. It is draped in luxury, sold as empowerment, and even mistaken for love. But beneath the surface of every desire lies a truth we rarely dare to touch: lust is not love. Lust is craving. And every craving, no matter how sweet at first, eventually burns. In this video, we are not here to shame desire or reject life's beauty. We are here to understand, to illuminate the hidden forces that disturb our peace and bind our hearts to suffering. If you've ever felt torn between pleasure and clarity, between craving and peace, this message is for you. Stay with me until the end. Not one word is wasted. By the time this teaching concludes, you may see your own desires, your own habits, and even your own freedom in a completely different light. Before we begin, please like this video, share it with others who may benefit, and subscribe to this channel if the teachings speak to your heart. And if a moment of insight touches you during this journey, I invite you truly to share it in the comments below. Sometimes, a single sentence in a conversation becomes the turning point in someone else's life. Now, let us begin. 1. What is lust in Buddhist terms? A deeper reflection. Lust, in the language of the Buddha, is kāma, the craving for sense pleasure. It is not merely the desire for intimacy, nor is it limited to physical longing. It is the entire web of wanting that binds the heart to the world of illusion. It begins subtly. A glance at beauty. A memory of warmth. A scent, a sound, a touch, that awakens the longing deep inside. And before we are even aware, the mind begins to spin. It says, I want more. I must have this. Without it, I am incomplete. But this is the great misunderstanding. You are not incomplete. You are not lacking. It is the craving that tells you so. In truth, kāma is not a problem because it exists. It is a problem because we believe it can satisfy us. But no matter how much pleasure we consume, it never quenches the thirst. It is like drinking salt water. The more you drink, the more dehydrated you become. Lust is not just about the physical act. It is about the story the mind tells. The fantasy of perfect beauty, perfect union, perfect pleasure, as if those things could deliver us from loneliness, sorrow, or death. But nothing in this world, no body, no taste, no sound, is lasting. Everything that arises must pass away. This is the law of impermanence, anicca. The Buddha saw this not through dogma, but through direct insight. He looked into the nature of the senses, the feelings they produce, and the mind that chases after them. And he saw that clinging is suffering. This is why he did not shame those who feel desire. He knew desire is part of being human. But he pointed to it with clarity, not to judge, but to liberate. He said, what is called pleasure in the world is merely the beginning of pain. What is called beauty is merely the surface of impermanence. And yet we chase it, as moths to a flame. Let us be honest, how often have we confused lust for love? How often have we mistaken attraction for connection? How often has the pursuit of pleasure left us emptier than before? Lust is not evil, but it is dangerous when misunderstood. It tricks us into thinking we are seeking union, when we are merely seeking escape. Escape from loneliness. Escape from boredom. Escape from facing ourselves. But true peace cannot be found through escape. It is found when we turn inward. when we sit with our emptiness without fear, when we observe desire, not with judgment, but with gentle curiosity, when we see lust for what it truly is, a wave that rises and falls, we no longer need to be carried by it. And then, something beautiful happens. In the space left behind by lust, compassion arises. In the absence of craving, clarity returns. And in the stillness beyond desire, freedom begins. The hidden nature of lust. Lust often disguises itself as joy. It approaches quietly, not as an enemy but as a friend whispering promises of delight, intimacy, and completion. For a moment, it feels real. The senses awaken. The heart stirs. There is sweetness, warmth, even wonder. But the nature of lust is not to satisfy. It is to multiply. The more you feed it, the more it grows. Like a fire devouring dry leaves, lust consumes what is offered and immediately asks for more. And when it is denied, it does not simply fade away, it turns. First into frustration, then into restlessness, irritation, and sometimes even despair. We often think of lust as a private longing, a personal flame. But it rarely stays contained. It spills into our thoughts, our emotions, our actions. You chase someone's attention, only to become anxious once you receive it. You feel attraction, and almost immediately, fear and jealousy follow. You enjoy pleasure, but instead of peace, what comes next is the subtle dread that it will not last, or worse, that it will never return. This is how lust binds us. Not through force, but through illusion. It convinces us that joy is found in possession, that beauty must be owned, that love requires constant validation. And so we cling, we grasp, we try to hold on to things that by their very nature are meant to pass. The Buddha taught that sensual craving kāma is one of the deepest roots of suffering. Not because pleasure is wrong, but because the mind that depends on pleasure for happiness becomes unstable. It moves from high to low, from excitement to fear, from satisfaction to loss, over and over again. He gave us an image. Lust is like licking honey from a razor's edge. The sweetness is real, but so is the cut that follows. Many of us only taste the honey. We do not notice the blade until it wounds. And yet, people chase lust their entire lives, believing that the next experience, the next person, the next thrill will finally be enough. But it never is. Because lust does not arise from fullness, it arises from lack. It is the hunger of a mind that believes something is missing, and that missing piece can be filled by another's body, voice, or presence. What the Buddha offered was not repression, but insight. He did not tell us to hate desire. He asked us to look at it gently, curiously, honestly. What is this feeling? Where does it lead? Why does it never last? When we bring awareness to lust, we begin to see its pattern. We recognize its voice, its urgency, its promises, and we stop believing it. And in that space, where craving once ruled, something new begins to grow. Stillness. Clarity. Freedom. Lust loses its grip not when we destroy it, but when we see it clearly. And when we do, we no longer fear its presence. We simply no longer obey its command. That is the hidden nature of lust. It thrives in darkness, but fades in the light of wisdom. A story from the Buddha's life. There is a well-known story from the time of the Buddha, quiet, brief, yet filled with the power to awaken. It tells of Venerable Anuruddha, one of the Buddha's foremost disciples in divine vision and insight. One day, a renowned courtesan, known for her beauty and grace, approached him. She had heard of this monk's deep serenity and wished to test him, perhaps even to seduce him. Dressed in the finest silk, adorned with jewelry and the scent of rare perfumes, she stood before him, smiling with practiced charm. But Anuruddha was unmoved. His gaze was steady, his heart untouched by delusion. And he said to her not with harshness, but with pure compassion, "Sister, your body is just a vessel. It carries bones, flesh, and decay. Why do you decorate it as though it will last?" The woman was struck not by insult, but by truth. For the first time, perhaps, someone had looked beyond her beauty and seen impermanence. Not desire. Not judgment. Just reality. And in that moment, something within her cracked open. Not from shame, but from awakening. She wept not for what was lost, but for what had been found. Not long after, she left behind her life of appearances and illusions. She became a practitioner of the Dhamma, walking the same paths she once came to disrupt. Her transformation was not born from rejection, but from clarity. This story reveals something profound, that lust loses its power not when it is resisted with anger, but when it is met with wisdom. Venerable Anuruddha did not see her as a temptation. He saw her as a being one trapped in the same cycle of clinging and suffering as all others. His words did not condemn her body, but pointed to its nature. And in doing so, he offered her a way out. For lust is powerful, but it is not ultimate. It is impermanent. It arises. It fades. And when we chase it, we drift further from the truth. But when we see it clearly, even a moment of desire can become a doorway to awakening. How lust disrupts inner peace. Lust does not always shout. More often, it whispers. It tiptoes into the mind during moments of silence, when the breath slows and the eyes close. Even in the midst of meditation, it can arise a memory, an image, a fantasy dressed in softness. It pretends to be harmless, yet the moment we indulge it, our inner stillness begins to tremble. This is the nature of lust. It agitates the mind. It pulls our awareness outward, away from the present moment, away from our center. What begins as a simple sensation quickly becomes a story. A story the mind writes over and over: if I have this, I will be happy. If I lose it, I will be broken. In that single thought, peace is lost. Lust thrives on illusion. It offers the appearance of connection while secretly feeding isolation. It tells us that fulfillment lies in the touch of another, the gaze of another, the presence of another. But can true wholeness ever be borrowed from someone else's body? Can lasting joy arise from something that is impermanent, unpredictable, and beyond our control? The Buddha saw this clearly. He did not teach us to run from pleasure, but to understand it. He taught that desire itself is not the enemy but our attachment to desire, our belief that without its object we are incomplete. This attachment is the true disturbance. It creates a mind that is never content, a heart that is always hungry. And where there is hunger, there is fear. The fear of not having. The fear of losing. The fear of being alone. Lust plants this fear deep in the soil of the mind, and from it grows anxiety, jealousy, sorrow, and restlessness. As the Buddha said, from lust arises sorrow, from lust arises fear. For one who is free from lust, there is no sorrow. How can there be fear? Look closely and you will see this truth in your own life. Recall the moments when you were consumed by desire. Was your mind at ease? Or was it racing, clinging, filled with both hope and dread? Perhaps there was excitement, even joy. But beneath that joy, was there not a trembling? The fear that it might slip away? The subtle tension that comes with trying to hold on to something that is always changing? This is how lust disrupts inner peace, not through its presence alone, but through our attachment to it. it becomes a chain, not because it is strong, but because we refuse to let go. And so we follow it, again and again, not realizing that each step leads us further from our true nature. But here is the deeper teaching: peace is not something we must create. It is already within us, always waiting. What we must do is remove what obscures it. Lust is one of those veils. When we see it without clinging, when we no longer chase its fleeting sweetness, the mind becomes still. Like a lake no longer stirred by wind, it begins to reflect the truth. To be free from lust does not mean to be without feeling. It means to no longer be ruled by craving. It is to walk through the world with open eyes and a quiet heart. To see beauty without needing to possess it. To feel love without needing to own it. To be present, completely, without grasping at what must eventually pass. That is true peace, not the absence of desire, but the absence of enslavement. Letting go is not suppression, it is freedom. Letting go is perhaps the most misunderstood teaching in the spiritual path. Many people hear the Buddha's words about renunciation and imagine a life of cold restraint, of turning away from beauty, from connection, from joy itself. But this is not the essence of the Dhamma. To let go does not mean to suppress. Suppression is violent. It is the act of forcing something down, of denying its existence out of fear or shame. And anything that is forced down will eventually rise up again, more restless, more distorted, more dangerous. True letting go begins with understanding. You observe desire not with hatred, but with awareness. You see how it arises, how it takes shape, how it seduces the mind. And slowly, without judgment, you begin to realize, I do not need this to be whole. I do not need to chase to feel alive. Letting go is an act of inner kindness. It is the willingness to set down what you've been carrying, not because it is evil, but because it is heavy. It is the moment you stop clinging, not to reject the world, but to return to yourself. You do not need to destroy desire. You simply stop being deceived by it. When lust loses its grip, what remains is not emptiness but spaciousness, peace, clarity. A kind of joy that does not depend on stimulation, that does not come and go with the changing winds of pleasure. It is a joy that arises from stillness, from knowing that nothing needs to be added for this moment to be enough. The Buddha never forced us to give anything up. He only showed us the truth that everything we cling to is impermanent. That grasping leads to suffering. That freedom comes not from having more, but from needing less. And so we walk the path not as someone running from the world, but as one learning to live in it without being bound by it. Letting go is not about being distant. It is about being deeply present, present enough to witness the rise and fall of desire without being pulled along. Present enough to love without fear, to feel without drowning, to see beauty without needing to possess it. This is the freedom the Buddha pointed to. Not a life of cold denial, but of radiant simplicity. Not absence, but presence. Not suppression, but surrender. And in that surrender, we find something astonishing. The peace we were chasing outside was within us all along. You've come this far, dear one. And if you're still here, it means your heart is ready for truth that does not flatter the ego, but frees it. We've seen how lust arises like a wave, promising warmth, connection, even love. But when we follow that wave without awareness, we are carried into restlessness, into fear, into suffering. The Buddha did not condemn lust to shame us. He illuminated its nature so that we might become free from its grip, not by force, but through understanding. Letting go is not suppression, it is liberation. And that liberation begins the moment we stop chasing, and start seeing clearly. So I leave you now with one question. What would your life look like if you stopped running after what cannot last? If this teaching resonated with you, speak your heart in the comments. Your insight, your struggle, your clarity, it may be the light another soul needs. And if this path feels like your path, please support this space by subscribing, so we may continue walking together. Until next time, may your mind be still, may your heart be free, and may you walk gently, with wisdom as your guide.